Quick history lesson. Every successful franchise you've ever watched in the NBA, from Red All Blacks and Bill Russell's Celtics to the dynasty we saw in Golden State with Steve Kerr and Steph Curry, has all been put together through the same basic fundamentals. Designated superstar, incredible role players, an understanding head coach, and at the heart of it all, Mo will love this bit, a well thought through GM. Look, of course, basketball in the 60s is not the basketball now. We have finances, we have egos, we have genuinely new positions on the court. But the blueprint, in terms of everything that has been successful in NBA franchises, is still the same. So whether you're a team that's balancing a collection of players and thinking to yourself, look, I've got these players, these picks, these finances, or you're a team that's redeveloping and you're saying to yourself, what about the new crop of players that's coming in? All that matters at the core of every NBA season is the same question. How do you build your NBA roster?
Now, as we know, there is a salary cap in place in the NBA, a restriction on spending which prevents all the best players from coalescing with the highest bidders. It's a good thing. It ensures a degree of parity across the league, helps somewhat spread the talent between higher and low market teams. But it does make team building a bit of a head scratcher. Franchises need to balance out a bunch of different contracts and vastly different wages, from superstars on max contracts to the guys on minimum salaries. Now, there's a bunch of different rules and exceptions around the salary cap that make it a little bit more flexible and infinitely more complicated. But what we want to do today is give you a bit of an idea, albeit an extremely simplified one, of how you build an NBA roster. So the basic gist of this is each season a portion of the league's basketball-related income is shared out between every other team to act as their player wage bill. And teams must use this sum to fill 15 roster slots. This year, the salary cap is about $109 million. Now, the biggest chunk of that goes to the so-called designated veteran players. These guys tend to be your superstars, your franchise players, the guys that you want to build around. These guys can take up to between 25% to 35% of the available salary cap, depending on their experience, accolades, and length of service with their current franchise. Out in the wild, you'll hear some of these contracts spoken about as maxes or super maxes, as they give the players the potential to earn the absolute maximum it's possible for them to earn, often for the maximum amount of years that the team can offer, give or take the odd player option. Offering up these bad boys is a bit of a balancing act, as it will affect what you've got left to offer out for the rest of the team. Dish out these max contracts too eagerly and you're going to find your team strapped for depth. Fail to commit to them at all and you might find your star players negotiating elsewhere. Oh, and there's also a restriction on super maxes. You're only allowed to offer 2, but given that would leave you with roughly 30% of your salary cap left to spend, it's not exactly a common approach. How much money you've got left is going to dictate what you can negotiate with the other players. It varies widely, but as you'd imagine, the more money you've got left, the higher caliber talent you'll lure, the more balanced your roster will tend to be. For each contract, it will be case by case. There is a minimum you have to adhere to, but we'll get into that later. First, we've got to talk about the new bloods. First round picks will sign what's known as a rookie scale contract, and the wage reflects their position in the draft. This season's top pick, Anthony Edwards, will earn about $9.7 million in his first year, roughly 8.9% of Minnesota's salary cap. The 30th pick, Desmond Bane, will take up approximately 1.8% of the Grizzlies' cap with a $1.9 million wage. The rookie scale contract they've signed guarantees them 2 years and comes with a team option for the 3rd and 4th years. Naturally, each year comes with a little pay bump. Should Minnesota look to extend Anthony Edwards for the maximum length of his rookie contract, he could be earning a base salary of $13.5 million in that 4th year. Same happens for Desmond Bane, his base wage will go up to $3.8 million. But second round picks, however, do not have the same assurances, and this brings us neatly back to minimum contracts. The absolute minimum salary that can be offered to a player on an active roster with 0 experience is $898,310, and this scales up with experience. For example, Dwight Howard signed a minimum contract with Philly in the offseason, but by playing over 10 seasons in the league, he'll qualify for the $2.56 million this year. Now, it's unlikely you'll fill your roster while staying under the salary cap. I mean, the average team uses up to 85.6% of the budget on just their top 5 best players. So there are different exceptions that can help you get around this. The most common is the minimum salary exception, which allows you to sign as many players as you need, so long as it's for the minimum amount they qualify for. There are other exceptions, but that's certainly on you to find out for now. So there you have it, the very, very basics of building a roster in the NBA. Now, you just need to get to grips with the myriad of exceptions, caveats, and legal jargon, and you'll be well on your way to becoming an NBA GM.
I'm just waiting for the day that Mo becomes a GM in this league so that I can turn around and ask him to break down all these numbers to me. That's all I'm waiting for. but BJ, look, historically, teams the following this game, or this game, as you would turn around and say, they've always tried to pair a dominant big with an equally sort of dominant or exceptional guard. Think about Kareem and Magic. You think about Shaq and Kobe. The list goes on. But the modern game is kind of changing a little bit. And I'm seeing maybe two adjoining pieces coming from maybe the same position or similar wings as you're seeing right now. I want to know from you, put that exact hat on for me for a second. If you were going into an NBA roster, what are the two leading pieces that you would want to build your franchise around?
Wow, JD, that's a great question. And I think since 1946, the league has been trying to figure that out and identify it. At one point, there was a sentiment or belief in this league that you had to build around big guys, and the big guys being the centers in this league. And suddenly now, as the game has transitioned, as the game has evolved to now where we are talking about wing players, and that kind of came with Michael Jordan and those type of players. So the effects on the wing players in this league has really evolved now to where we're having a huge effect where now it's literally small ball. Okay, the Golden State Warriors ushered in and won playing small ball or playing in spurts. They didn't always go small for the entire game, unlike the Houston Rockets and some of the teams where they're constructed today. But the Golden State Warriors had what they referred to as the death lineup, where they would go small and play this game where they would switch, so forth and so on. I think the most important thing when you talk about building a team is you have to draft well. And the reason you have to draft well, because that gives you the ability to play the game at certain points the way the game is played, because we have this thing now called pace and space. Smaller players can play that game at that pace. But it gives you the financial flexibility to build your roster, because when you have a player that you draft, it allows you some financial freedom that you otherwise couldn't get if you acquired this player or accepted this player via trade or free agency. So I think you have to draft well. When you talk about the teams that have won, you draft Steph Curry. Okay, you have to draft these players that are going to allow you to build your roster in the correct way. So I think drafting your players and having positionless players are the two most important ingredients today. Players that can play multiple positions, because you have to play a variety style. You have to play in a variety of ways and style if you're going to win. You got to play big, you got to play small, you got to be a little scrappy. So I think having a number of players that can play multiple positions, positionless players, guards who can play both the point guard and the two guard. So I think those are the two ingredients that's necessary for you to build a roster if you're talking about competing and winning the NBA championship.
That is exceptional. I've taken a huge amount of notes there and I've circled it all together, and I've turned around and said the word that I'm looking for right there, versatility. Yeah, all you future GMs out there, BJ just gave you a gem. Versatility is what you're looking for.